Players and coaches demand respect for African Cup. Yeah, we are in the world of football. Like I told you before, right? Football is something that unites the African continent. If there is one thing that everyone agrees with is football. Africa is a continent that loves football. And when it comes to football, everyone is so passionate about, and emotions can sometimes get the better of us all. Supporters have been disappointed with their teams. Some have even taken to the street to protest. Others have destroyed things. This is a very, very challenging time for my fellow African brothers and sisters. Seeing their teams lost in the competition has really saddened their hearts. But let's continue. Some of the best soccer in the world is being played at the African Cup of Nations in Ivory Coast. However, away from the African continent, few seem to be paying attention. African Cup games are mostly not freely accessible for fans in Europe to watch, while news about the Biana tournament featuring 24 of the continent's best national teams is often overshadowed by news about domestic competitions. With this edition of the African Cup being played at the same time as Euro Big Five leagues in England, Spain, Italy, France, and Germany, the tournament is in danger of being overlooked. Well, in the world of football, people choose differently. And I know we Africans um, have realized that we are not taken as seriously as other race or other place around the world. But I just have to say this in a more positive light, right? Do not always seek validation from other people. Do not always cry out when people do not acknowledge your importance or your achievement. Do not always go seeking for people's attention. Do what you are doing and let people come to you, or let people's attention turn towards you. All this spotlight seeking or all this crying is not helping anyone. Like I said in a previous video, that Africa will always, or African leaders will always cry out about unfair treatment from international institutions like the World Bank and the IMF. They will always complain about how they pay far much for the same amount of debt than the European or Americans. They complain about this day in, day out. Why stay collecting money from these institutions? And I'm like, if you think collecting this loan or debt from them is not a great idea, why go for it? Why don't you have alternative to the World Bank and IMF? Why don't the 54 countries in Africa come together and build something for Africa and for Africans? Why do you still put your foreign reserves in Western Bank instead of creating an African bank in Africa and then putting all your reserves into it? There are a lot of things we can do to get the respect we deserve. But virtue signaling or spotlight crying is not going to help us. If there's one thing it does, it just make us look like crying babies. But let's move ahead. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken visits Ivory Coast. Yeah, Antony Blinken is in Africa for an African tour. He is trying to revamp the American-African cooperation. America is worried that China is making a lot of progress in Africa, that Russia is winning the likeness of many people in Africa, and now they are trying to come back and like say, hey, listen, I'm sorry, I might have neglected you. I'm sorry, I didn't take you seriously. But please, can we have a timeout? Can we start all over again? That's what America is doing in Africa. But I'm not sure as to how much this is going to achieve, but let's wait and see. Because if there's one thing I know about America is they are full of talking. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Ivory Coast on Monday, the second stop on his four-nation tour of African countries. During the visit, Blinken went to the Stade Olympique Alexander Ouattara for Amira's Cup of Nations soccer game, where he was presented with a shirt bearing his surname. Speaking at the event, Blinken complimented the Ivory Coast for the extraordinary organization of this tournament and spoke of the power of sport for building connections between people. It's great to be in a small part of this year to honor the incredible work that the Ivory Coast is doing in bringing all of those countries together. Bringing all of those together, and it's another way of building bridges between the United States and Africans. Infrastructure, but this is building connection between people. Sports does that as well as anything. It is a pleasure to be a part of this tonight, he expressed. Blinken is on a tour of four African countries as the Biden administration tries to keep its eyes on all corners of the world while being consumed by crises in Ukraine, the Middle East, and the Red Sea. He arrived in Ivory Coast after visiting Cape Verde and will also be visiting Nigeria and Angola for talks focused on regional security, conflict prevention, democracy promotion, and trade. I like when they sprinkle democracy in whatever they do. It's like these people need democracy the most. And the only thing we can say to them is democracy. So let's sell them democracy. They always try to sprinkle it like it's like a fine recipe for development. Democracy. But I think that there are things we need in Africa that are way more important than democracy. People cannot eat democracy. People need to eat food. People need food to eat, not democracy. Now, democracy is a very fine principle. It's to have. Democracy is a very great thing if people can practice it wholeheartedly, if people can respect every single thing about democracy. But I don't think Africa is ready for that. And trying to force that on Africa will just make us have what we have now. Democracy only by name, but authoritarian in action. So let's hope that Antony Blinken's trip to these four African countries brings something great to them. So guys, those were the stories we were able to cover for today. And we hope you enjoyed them. So share your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. Let us know which of the stories that we covered really resonated with you. And if you came across any story from Africa that you would like us to cover on this show, please you can send it our way through our social media contacts on this channel description section. We shall be happy to cover it on this show. And one more thing, please do not forget to like this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel because that helps us a lot and we shall forever be grateful to you. So thank you very much for doing just that. And like always, see you in the next one.